Hello and welcome to episode 19 of the VGN Weekly for October 22nd, 2024. As always, we will recap this past week's Virtual Grip Network race broadcast and bring you in-depth interviews with your favorite drivers, league owners, commentators, and more. So please like and subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of our broadcasts. If you are a league owner and you have a broadcasting need or are a sponsor and would like to get your name out there, please visit us at thevirtualgrip.net for more info on how to get in touch with us. Hello, I am John Hyde, along with producer of all things VGN, Ryan Seneker. We are here to welcome today's guest, who is a part of the brother duel. It's going to be Tom Hilbert this week. But first, we need to recap all this week's action that was on the Virtual Grip Network.
Saturday night, the Bootleg Racing League's Outlaw SK Modified Invitational Series brought excitement to the short track at Oswego. Tom Hilbert started on the pole alongside his brother Steve, but Steve would take control on lap 6 as Tom dropped all the way back through the field. The first caution came on lap 10 when Joe Segala made contact with race leader Steve Hilbert, triggering a multi-car incident involving Lowell Jewell, John Wilson, and Bruce Pearson, with Jewell suffering the most damage. On the restart, Steve Hilbert held the lead until lap 32 when Alan Wanamaker seized his opportunity, diving to the inside and overtaking Hilbert. Todd Liston and the rest of the top 5 followed along, leaving Hilbert shuffled back. Over the next 20 laps, Liston and Steven Spies battled fiercely for the second position, swapping spots while keeping Wanamaker in their sights. The race's second caution flew on lap 83 when Jeffrey Harden spun following contact from Adam Shane. The next restart saw dramatic acrobatics from Chris Hazlip's number 93 car. With just 6 laps remaining, Wanamaker led the field back to the green flag and pulled away, but Spies and Liston stayed close, trying to find a way around. Spies surged high, he surged low, but Wanamaker defended his lead and clinched his first win of the season in a thrilling finish. After the modified race wrapped up, the Bootleg Racing League's Late Model Invitational Series took to Oswego Speedway for 100 laps of action. It was Lowell Jewell leading him to the green flag, quickly settling into the lead, but drivers struggled to find a rhythm as the yellow flag flew early and often. Lowell Jewell would hold the top spot until a restart stack-up caused chaos, the leaders coming back around the track and piling into the incident 1 lap later. This would hand the lead over to Jeffrey Harden, who jumped out front on the restart, but was immediately under pressure from Todd Liston and Alan Wanamaker. For over 30 laps, Harden fended off Liston's advances, until lap 63, when Liston finally made his move and took the lead. Harden stayed glued to Liston's rear bumper, never losing sight of the leader, and on lap 81, he pounced, reclaiming the top spot and pulling away from the field to secure his second victory of the season at Oswego.
Welcome back once again. I am John Hine, along with producer extraordinaire Ryan Seneker, as we will welcome Tom Hilbert to the show. Tom's first BRL race was January 21st, 2023 in the SK at USA Speedway. He has gone on to have 339 starts with us, an average finish of 10.9, 21 top fives, and 163 top tens. Tom, welcome to the show, and bear with me with my scratchy sounding voice.
Thanks for having me, John.
Well, I always like to start these and find out what was your joining to iRacing. How did you find iRacing? How did you get into iRacing?
Actually, with iRacing itself, I had known about it for quite a while, but of course, my brother got me mostly interested in it, and he kept pushing me and pushing me to join, and that was kind of the way it went.
Well, when you and you sent me some background information. You actually use this as a tool, almost. It sounded like almost like a rehabilitation tool. Was that correct when you had a seizure?
Yeah, actually, one thing I've always loved to do is just to drive.
Mhm.
Just it's just something I've always liked, and actually had a grand mal seizure in spring of 22, and it was pretty scary. And they told me for 6 months I wasn't allowed to drive, so kind of pushed me to simulate driving.
What's funny is I've actually let my kids, as they were starting to learn, hop in here and do that. So I mean, you're right; it's a great tool. Well, you got into it. You've used it a little bit. Well, now, how did you find that the BRL?
My brother, of course, he told me about it, and told me about the broadcasts and the stuff that's done. I, started watching some of that, and as well during the COVID timing. Some of the NASCAR stuff. Being an old, just being a NASCAR fan, looking for racing to watch.
Yeah, and I have to assume because we spoke to your brother earlier, and you guys can all check out that episode if you on our channel and you look back. But there's a bit of a sibling rivalry there, and I gotta ask. Last night, you guys raced each other hard. There's a little bit of contact there. What are those conversations like between the two of you, like post race? I mean, whether you guys are battling or not, but talk to me about like bragging rights and that stuff.
Actually, it's funny. It's not really so much a rivalry. It's just we're very competitive,
Oh
especially with
yeah,
each other. And like last night, he sends me a text and says, "Hey, sorry for getting into you," and it's like I didn't even realize you touched me. So it's like but I look at it not just with him, but I look at it with everybody in the league. I don't know that anybody truly does anything intentionally. I look at it as racing, and everybody's out there to have fun. And that's one of the things I really like about league racing.
yes, yeah. You get a group of guys, you get to know each other, and yeah, occasionally there's a little disagreement amongst yourselves, but I mean it's kind of one big family, and BRL definitely has that vibe, and uh, it's definitely one of the better leagues I think that's in the service. But when you guys have that, when you guys are there, I mean, how much fun is it though to race your brother? I have to think that when you guys are out there battling, I can only imagine that both of you got ear to ear smiles as you guys are doing that. Would I be correct in that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think in the street stock race last night, I beat him coming out of four for, I don't know what I ended up, probably ninth or 10th or somewhere in there. But, it's always fun to get that just to get that edge.
Any trash talking, like a text after that? Gotcha. Anything like that?
That's almost word for word.
That's awesome. Um, can you tell me one of the better battles? I mean, because you've got to probably have one that just sticks out in your mind. Is there one that you guys just had so much fun that you just wish like every race was like this?
Quite honestly, I can't remember
Mm.
specifically one, but it's both of us. We finish. If you look at our times and you look at our finishes, we're always right around each other. which is his fault because he's 11 months and a week older than me. So, everything I learned from him. So it's his fault.
Well, it sounds like you not only learned from him, but if you're always close to him and all that, it sounds like maybe you've kind of got a little bit of the upper hand there. He had a head start, and you're caught up with him, right?
Yeah. In fact, we just had that conversation earlier today. But, like I said, we've always been competitive. In high school, we both, we played 3 sports a year, both of us. He was being 1 year ahead of me.
Hmm.
It always set the stage, it always set the bar for me. I always had to be, because everybody, not only did everybody expect me to be him, but I expected myself to be as good or better than him. That's why I quit playing baseball because I knew that when I got to high school, I was never going to be as good a baseball player as he was. So I ran track instead.
Oh, that is awesome. Well, your time in BRL, we've noticed you improve greatly over, and stuff like that. What are some of the things? I mean, do you guys kind of like practice together or anything like that? Share secrets or anything? Because you both have improved, and just like anybody else that comes into service, there's a learning curve. Even though we all know how to drive and stuff like that, there's still some nuances and a learning curve. Have you guys helped each other with that learning curve? Do you guys share anything like that?
Share everything as far as, he runs a different set of pedals than I do, I think,
Mhm.
but we run the same wheel. He runs a single big monitor. I use triples. Um, but yeah, as far as like setups on Moza, actually, Matt Hoos and John Wilson and Steve and I, the four of us, we practiced a lot together, and that helped. It really helped me. I know it. I'm sure it helped Steve some too, but it really helped me, and it's just a lot of fun.
Well, that is awesome to kind of hear, and as you guys gotten older, now you got something that kind of bonds you even now. You got separate lives and all that as folks get older, and that's really neat. And racing does that. I mean, you see father sons and brothers. Family ties in racing, I think, are present more so than a lot of sports. Um, so I have to assume that racing background, that love of racing started early for you guys. Kind of walk me through where did you get the bug? Where did that start?
Basically, from my dad and his brother, my uncle. They owned a gas station here in town, but they were just huge racing fans. My uncle would go to Daytona back in the late '60s, and he'd go down there for speed weeks and stuff. And Dad would run the gas station and stuff. And locally we had you had Columbus Motor Speedway. Maybe an hour away is Shady Bowl, which is probably a good name
Those
for it.
are all Ohio speedways.
Yes, and
Yeah.
You had Killcare, which is down in Xenia.
Hmm.
Um, and then, of course, you've got Eldora, which is that they forgot to pave that. I don't know. It's got that.
Whoa, 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 whoa!
that
What do you mean? I'm thinking they messed up the other tracks by paving them.
I
But
just
yes,
had to throw that out there.
that's
Also,
all right. I felt the needle.
it's kind of funny. A lot of people don't know it, but there was a speedway in Powell, Ohio, that closed I think it closed in the early '60s, and luckily now because it's right outside Muirfield and all those big, the big well-to-do uh, housing areas in Columbus. But it was a half-mile speedway that was there until probably the mid to late '70s, but only like club racers and stuff could use it. So you'd drive by there and you'd see the speedway, and it's like, when aren't they using that thing?
Well, that is awesome. So, which one of the tracks was your favorite? When you found out, hey, this is where we're going to go this week. Which track kind of geeked you up the most? That made you ready to go to?
Always just Columbus Motor Speedway. It was the
Um,
closest one. It's I think a third mile. Um, In fact, I think one of the last races that I saw there was my dad and I went because I wanted to see, actually wanted to see Legends run. I had seen, seen, at that time hobby stocks and late models and stuff like that, but I'd never seen Legends run. And that was pretty interesting. I actually saw one that luckily the billboards that were above the guardrails kept it in the track.
I like to call those clown cars. That's what I always call them when I've seen them at the track. But well, what on a weekly basis when you guys went, what were the classes that ran there normally?
There was the hobby stocks, just hobby stocks, late models, and then towards the end they started running like a mini stock series, which was the little four cylinders, very similar to what iRacing has just added.
What was your favorite?
Late models. I mean, that's where there were guys from here in town. There was a guy from here in town that raced a lot of late models. Then he ran a lot of ASA and stuff. But we kind of moved from watching local stuff to watching ASA.
I was just going to ask you who was your guy there at that local track? Who was your favorite guy to kind of root for, and who you always tried to find on the track when he was out there?
Well, it's kind of I'll show my age here, but there was a gentleman, they called him Gentleman Jim Cushman, who was he ran a couple of Daytona 500s, I believe, but that was in the early 70s. I remember he ran the Dodge, I think it was, or Plymouth, like a Duster kind of. It was a kit car that Chrysler came out with back in the day, and then they built those. And then Vern Schrock, who was here in town, his boys went to school with Steve and I, and then the local track hero was a guy by the name of Don Gregory, and he was a pretty good driver.
Well, you sounds like you had a lot of action there and a lot of good memories from that. And then you said you started watching ASA and stuff like that. So when you guys started watching that, did you guys ever, travel out to go watch those, or did those come in locally, start coming in locally?
It was almost a yearly visit to Winchester to
Mm,
watch the 400 out there.
those high bank.
Yes, and it was always kind of cool because my folks would take their camper out there, and then you'd spend the weekend with them.
Oh, how
And
cool.
and in the evenings, I don't know if they did it on purpose or whatever, but you could get in, you could walk the track, and you should try to walk up that banking.
Oh,
It's
I know. Have.
unbelievable.
Yeah, it is, and Bristol, and you see these things on TV now, and none of them compare to Winchester. I really wish iRacing would scan that track. I really hope at some point they do. Um, when you guys went over there and did that, you said you guys camped out for the whole weekend. At that point, I mean, now when they have these 2-day shows, there's so much that goes on with it. They have like local concerts and stuff like that. So when you guys went, was it just basically a big camp out, or did they have other things going on like what you see now?
No, back then it was just everybody just camped, and year to year the same group of people would be very close to each other, and you'd see the same people year in year out, and you could walk down around the corner to where the drivers were, and you always saw Dick Trickle with a beer and a cigarette in his hands, and and Rusty Wallace. Of course I was a Mark Martin fan, and it just, I mean, they're just hanging out, just you know pretty cool.
Yeah, I remember the first time I met Butch Miller, and I was just a wee tot the first time I met him, and it was like right after a race, and I came in, and he's already drinking a beer, and I was just thinking, I don't know why I thought, that's the coolest dude on the planet at that point. So, seeing your drivers for the first time, not in that fire suit, just like a normal person is. At least for me was I don't know why it made an impression. I don't know if it did for you, but just seeing them like that, your heroes out of their gladiator suits is that's always a cool moment when you can see that. Um, I know that we're going to touch on kind of where you work and all that a little bit later, but you've got some real world experience. I gotta hear the story about the go kart at Suzuka.
In one of my, I think I went to Japan 13 times
Mhm.
for my work, and one of the trips was just a 2 week trip. So we had one weekend at the Suzuka plant there, and Suzuka Circuit is owned by Honda, and it's an amusement park, but it's got the Grand Prix track there. Well, we're bunch of guys, we're just hanging out, we're looking for something to do, and we saw it said go karts. It's like, oh, we got to try this. And
What could go wrong?
I honestly don't know how much money we spent racing go karts on that thing, but you got like 2 laps, and it was I want to think, I
Did
can't
you guys
remember
did you guys run the full layout, or was there a shorter
the shorter.
go kart?
It
Okay.
was it was the NASCAR. When NASCAR went to
Okay.
their exhibitions, they went to
Gotcha.
the I think it was the east or the west course, but it
Okay.
was a straightaway, a turn, a couple S's, and then another turn back down.
Yeah.
It was like I want to say a mile, maybe
Yeah.
maybe a little more.
That's the one where you go through the S and start going back up the hill and then arc back around the front stretch there. Okay.
Yeah,
That's still the cool. What was
yeah.
that like going through those S's?
Oh, it was a blast. I mean, their go karts were, they're not really fast, but you're going fast enough to where we had a lot of fun, and but it was just so cool to think, I'm actually racing on a track that Ayrton Senna, Alan Prost, you know Nelson Piquet, all those guys all raced on.
Yeah, and going fast is also kind of a relative term because when you're in a go-kart and your butt is like that far off the ground, 25, 30 mile an hour feels like you're hauling the mail compared to when you're up in a car. So yeah, all that history there at that track, like you said, Nicky Lauda and James Hunt and yeah, to hop on that track. Did you how hard was it to when you got out there to kind of follow the track and kind of get the tunnel vision that you do when you're racing, you get kind of a tunnel vision. Um and not just be like looking around and sightseeing and taking it all in. Were you able to did you do both or were you able to focus?
Well, I think that was the advantage of being with a group. There were 5 or 6 of us,
Hmm.
and you spent part of the time kind of racing, part of the time laughing at each other, and trying to figure out. Of course, I don't think any of the other guys who were with me were really racing fans,
Hmm.
so I was trying to figure out how to draft, try to get in behind them, and well, then you actually could, and then you bump them a little bit. Well, then we'd get a little bit of trouble for doing that, but
Why do I see you now on the front stretch going down there and like reaching behind trying to goose that governor on that thing to get that extra? I can just see you doing that now. But that is so cool to be able to do that and be at such a historic venue to do that. Um, w- you know, I've gone to Indianapolis and Daytona, and I've been to places like that. And as soon as you get there, you feel the history staring back at you. Now, Suzuka, I've never been there, so the layout. Paint me the picture when you get there. I mean, when you get there, are you aware of wow, that history, all that kind of stuff? Is that there, or does that happen more once you get inside that place?
for me, it was more once we got in there,
Hmm.
and the thing that's kind of unique about Suzuka is, and I didn't research this exactly, but most of your tracks have more right-hand turns or more left-hand turns. Suzuka has an equal amount because it's a figure eight, basically, because it has a
Yeah.
crossover.
Yes, it does.
I never realized that until,
I would have never thought that either. I mean, I knew it had the crossover, and whatnot to it, but I never really thought about the turns. That's well, see, now I'm gonna have to go look that up, and I mean, I'm sure. I mean, I know you're right, but I don't know. That seems like an interesting fact to know. I want to know more about that fact now.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And the thing was, the Japanese guys that we hung out with while we were there, they said, "Oh, you should have been here on Family Day. They let us run the whole track." And it's like, oh man,
Oh, yeah. How cool would that be? That's. Did you, at least when you guys got to go there though? Did you guys like to take just regular cars and take a slow lap all the way around the track, or did you guys have to limit to the go karts?
just the go karts just on the weekend. But they did make us come off the track and wait while there were I don't know if they were club racers or whatever, but there were guys there working on like touring cars in the
Hmm.
garage, and they'd pull us off the track, and those guys would go out and make 4 or 5 laps on the full track, and then they'd take them when they took them back to the garage. They'd open it back up and give us time to stand in line and figure out how much money we had left to go out and run some more laps.
Man, that sounds like such a good time. Well, why don't we tell everybody here, tell us a little bit about where you work, because that kind of opened the door to this whole trip now we've been talking about for 5 minutes, because you have a really cool job. So why don't you tell us about it?
Well, had a really cool
Oh,
job. I'm
had.
retired. I worked for Honda of America in Marysville, Ohio. Put in a little over 32 years, and started working on the assembly line and worked my up from way up from there. Did production planning for the last 20 years. Made, it was actually pretty cool. I'm glad that I wasn't in production planning during the COVID years, because it's just incredible how much work those people had to do because you don't know what parts are coming in, you don't know what you're producing.
I was just going to ask you, what is production planning? What exactly does that entail?
We would we were the liaison between sales and production. So
Gotcha.
sales would tell us what they wanted, when they wanted it, what the mix was, down to color, grade, everything, automatic, manual transmission, um, all the individual grades, and we would meet with production and say, okay, here's what sales wants. Production come back, say, okay, here's what we need to do it. And then somebody else would figure out a cost, and then we'd go back to sales and say, maybe we can do this, but it's just a negotiation back and forth. And then when something takes off, then you have to adjust everything. And we typically operated with a base plan 3 months out. So it's just working backwards from there.
Did any of that cross over into their racing? Because I mean, you got suppliers and stuff like that for, I mean, everything over here in the States, from sports car racing, IndyCar to, um, uh, God, I know there's a couple other forms that they have. It just slipped my mind, but I mean, there's a lot of different automotive avenues that you can go down. Did you ever get to bleed into any of those other areas?
I did not, but it was because part of it was just because of being, busy with working, and at that time had young kids. But we actually had a Honda of America racing team,
Hmm.
HART, and they ran. Trying to think what they ran. They've run the Accord, and then I think they switched to different models. In fact, and just how people always will bend the rules as they can.
Working in gray areas.
Yes, yes.
That's what we prefer.
One case, one year, the European Civic Type R had
Hmm.
had a sequential gearbox, so they figured out they could race it here because it was a production car. It just wasn't a North American car, but they brought everything in from overseas.
Oh, wow. How cool is that? Well, so you have ties with Honda then. I have to presume that you've used those connections to get to do some really cool stuff with Honda.
Actually, a couple things. Back um, when IndyCar and Kart split back in, I can't remember the year, they ran what they call it, US 500 up in Michigan.
Hmm.
Well, they gave us all tickets to that. Well, I don't particularly like going to the actual races. I like going for time trials and practices because you get more freedom to move around and see things.
Yes.
So we got to go to that for free. They also um, would give us free tickets and paddock passes to Mid Ohio. That was they I think still do that up, but it's as a retiree it's a little harder because it's always timing when because they only have so many available. But that was always cool because you could get into the paddock and walk around in there and see the
Wow.
drivers.
Yeah, you talk about that time trial and everything else. I mean, I'll age myself now. Back in the day, Indy time trials were to be there at the speedway were. I mean, I know this is going to be probably sacrilege to say this, but I thought it was a lot more fun to go to the time trials too. Watch Bump Day and back. We're talking back in the late 70s, early 80s. At that point in time when 40, 45 cars would show up. Um, Man, those were some intense days there, and like you said, could move around and see different spots and watch them and all that kind of good stuff. So, um, well, you talk about getting in the paddock. So, who all did you cross paths with? I mean, what are some of the? Go ahead and feel free to name drop some of the guys that you cross paths with.
um Mainly because my youngest daughter is actually a fan of Marco Andretti, so we would spend part of the time you know going through the paddock trying to find Marco. But we'd cross paths with Tony Kanaan in a on one of the little scooters, basically the little mini bikes they ride around, and run into you walk right past these guys and you wouldn't even realize who they were until they walk past you, and then you're like, oh wait, and it was pretty cool. But one thing about being at Honda that we got to do that was really cool when F1 came to, I think it was the last year they ran Detroit, they brought the F1 cars to the plant,
Oh, wow.
and you have not heard anything until you hear one of those fired up inside a building. Well, then they would take them out to the, we had a 6 lanes of traffic in and out of the parking lot. They would block that off, and the only thing between that F1 car and a whole row of associates watching it was a nylon rope to keep you from. And they would, Ayrton Senna, Nelson Piquet, they'd get in that car and they would run. They wouldn't run at top speed, but they ran it fast enough that when you got an F1 car, and the only thing between you and them is a nylon rope, and it comes by, even if it comes by at 100 miles an hour, it's unbelievable, unbelievable.
Yeah, I got to see F1 at Indianapolis. God, it had to be about 2004, maybe five, six, somewhere. I'm getting old, so the years, but it was before the tire debacle. But there was Schumacher and Alonso and all of them there. But that was before they went to the new engines, where you still had those engines that were 12, 13, 14,000 RPM, and how the front stretch of Indy is. It's kind of covered there, and how it would echo going down there, those cars. Oh my gosh, I've never heard anything like that ever. And I at least was up in the stands in a nylon rope. um, I mean, I don't. That would probably, I can only imagine what that would. That would almost, everyone uses the word breathtaking for so many things, but I would have to think when those go by, it just takes your breath away when you would see that. Um, those engines I've always, because I never heard those back in the 80s, because even those engines were a little different than the 2000 ones. But the only other engine that I really like to hear, and I got to hear a little bit of one, was here at Gateway. They had, you remember those old Offie engines from the 1950s, that low grumble. One guy got on the track and circled in I think it was a replica of like Jim Hurtaby's like 1958 or 59 car, and Oh my gosh, that was the most incredible thing, hearing that car start up, and being that close though to guys like Senna, like you said. Did you get to interact, get to autograph or anything like that from him when he was there?
Yeah, actually, as I'm sitting in my rig right now, but on the wall behind my rig, I've got three posters of kart drivers that are all autographed. I've got a picture of myself with Paul Tracy, and I've got an autographed Ayrton Senna picture. That you
I
know,
would never let go of that.
yeah, it's you know, it, a lot of people say that Schumacher's great, Hamilton's great,
Hmm.
had
Which they are.
and they, yeah, I'm not taking anything away
Yep.
from them. Had Ayrton Senna survived the crash, he would have set records that nobody. I mean, he was amazing to me.
Yeah, one thing I would recommend, and I grew up in that era watching the battles between Senna and Prost, and I'm telling you now, I mean, you know this, but in the history of racing, you think of all the different the Gordon and Earnhardt, when that they were at it, Rusty and Earnhardt, and some of the rivalries we've seen over here. Um, that Senna Prost rivalry, how those guys raced each other, sometimes clean, sometimes not so clean. Um, those battles to this day are probably my favorite sports memory, racing memories as a fan. Um, those battles got me so hooked into F1 from that point. Um, and I think you're right. I think to me, Senna is the best ever. And if anybody out there's got Netflix or anything like that, there's a Senna documentary. I cannot recommend that enough. That's probably the best racing film ever made. Grand Prix will be a close second, but that Senna documentary was unbelievable. Do you have a favorite? Since we're both obviously Senna fans here, you have a favorite Senna memory that stands out, just out of curiosity?
Just his dominance at was it Monaco? I mean, that
Yeah,
guy. I mean, you look at that. You look at that course, and there's no way anybody should ever pass a car on that course. It's too tight. It's too the streets are so narrow and everything else, and he was just and in the rain, any of the courses that he raced in the rain,
yeah.
he was heading to the front.
His first win there was in a car that was a back marker. I mean, that car had no business, and he drove it through the rain and passed for, I forgot what the make of the car was, but until Senna sat in that car, it was a proverbial back marker.
I think
And
I think it was a Tolman.
was it a Tolman? I knew it was a white car, so and Tolman was white, so that makes sense. Um, but yeah, that oh man, that was a great time. I mean, the only time that was before before I was around. I think the only time that I can think of that would probably beat the F1 in the 80s was F1 in the late 60s, early 70s. You had your Jim Clark, you had your Jackie Stewarts. Um, Man, and those guys, if you ever get into a museum and look at some of those old Formula One cars and how those guys had to drive them, those were some real drivers back then too. So yeah, those are the two eras that are my favorite from a historical standpoint. There, let's go back to your yeah, about working there at Honda and getting some of those connections and stuff like that. Um, how much did those guys, you had the F1 guys that came in there to the shops and all that, but did you guys ever have a lot of the American side, your IndyCar guys? I mean, did they ever come in and do stuff like that also?
Yeah, we actually, like I said, I've got the cart lineup from '01 and '02
Hmm.
with all the signatures, and actually the American Le Mans, uh, the Acura team. I've got all their signatures too from one of those years. But yeah, they would bring the Indy cars in, and as we grew, as Honda grew, and went from having just one plant in Marysville, but you had one in Marysville. You had research and development. You had an East Liberty plant. You had an Anna plant. So you had basically three or four locations. and plus a transmission plant right here in Ohio. So they ended up they with the IndyCar drivers, they split them all up.
Hmm.
But I was lucky enough to get to just to happen to be in meetings in California when the Long Beach Grand Prix was going on. So
Oh, cool.
just happened to get signatures of all of them.
I've gotta ask. That's one of my bucket list races to go to is the Long Beach Grand Prix. What is that atmosphere like when you were around that? You got to tell me, what was that like?
Well, we were only there through the week, so I didn't get to go.
Oh, I would have stayed later. I'd have said,
Yeah,
"Yeah, you guys are paying me for the weekend. I'm
the
not leaving."
but the drivers are so cool. Like Alex Zanardi. Um,
Mm,
we're sitting there and they're all lined up. Getting autographs, and uh, a lady that I used to work with out there had somehow won like a big magnum of wine that was something about his championship. And she had a special pen. She wanted him to autograph it. And it wouldn't write. So he just reached down and starts dabbing the thing on the carpet to get the thing to write. He didn't care. He just, he
that's
was, they didn't want them to sign anything other than the posters and stuff that were there. And he's like, no, she's bringing this up. I'm signing it. And okay.
that is so cool. Yeah, that's one of the bucket list races I'd like to go. I think that'd just be a really cool atmosphere. Well, speaking of bucket list races, since obviously you're a big fan and Monaco, and do you have a couple of bucket list races that you would like to go and just be at attend?
I mean, not really,
Not
because
like Le Mans or anything like that?
Le Mans maybe. Um, but like I've been to the Brickyard twice.
Hmm.
I've been to Daytona. Didn't go to the 500 just because I don't like fighting enormous crowds, but I was there for Speed Week, and we left Daytona. Actually, Steve and I and our dad, we left Daytona on Saturday night and drove home before the race started on Sunday, which might have been a speed limit or so. Didn't break
Well,
any, just bent them.
well, cop didn't see you do it. You didn't. It never happened. So, um, yeah, that's fascinating. I guess you've gotten to go to some pretty cool places. So, yeah, yeah. Um, well, you have some other hobbies. You mentioned that you're now retired and moving away from that Honda life and all that kind of stuff. And I saw that you got a couple of new passions, woodworking and some cooking and stuff like that. So why don't we start with the woodworking? Tell me about that, and then what about it that you like, and how often do you get to kind of dabble with that stuff?
I've got a shop set up here in my basement, and again, it's another one of those hobbies that my brother had a huge influence on because you know he and his sons do the woodshed where they make different wood things and stuff. I just basically do it to pass time, just try to as an example, my sim rig that I'm sitting in,
Hmm.
I don't want the rig sitting on the floor, so of course I built a platform to get it up to where it's easier to get in and out of.
What are the kind of things you like building in there? I mean, is it, are you like making end tables, chairs? I mean, is there something particular you just projects you kind of like working on, or is it just kind of, hey, whatever, mood hits you, this is what you're going to do?
Usually, either my wife or our kids, somebody comes up with something that they like or want to do. As an example, one daughter we built a blanket chest. Um, I built my entertainment center up in the family room and both end tables. Just different things. I've done some stuff building like pipe lamps where you use the iron pipe and stuff. Build a few of those. Build a desk for my one son. Um, just just whatever comes up, just
Yeah,
find
that's
something to
very
do.
cool. It's probably a nice way to kind of pass time and almost relaxing. I mean, so I know I don't know why this just came to my mind, but some people like trimming like bonsai trees, or they like painting, or whatever. Um, that's a really cool outlet to have, actually. I'm actually kind of jealous because show my age again. Back in the day, we had woodworking as one of our classes, and I wasn't always the best student, so I didn't really pay attention in that class, and I kind of wish I would because you can do some really cool stuff. Um,
Well,
I'm,
I always figured that I'd do something different and never even had a desire to even look into the woodworking classes. And it's like, darn, wish I'd done that.
yeah. Well, your other one is food. Tell me what is, what, first of all, what is your favorite type of food? What's your favorite?
Italian, definitely.
Italian. Nice. Well, what do you think you make the most of then, though? I know that maybe smoking brisket. I think you mentioned that in a little thing that you sent me there. And so what do you do? How do you smoke? What is your go-to wood and all that kind of stuff?
Usually, I'm trying to think. I'll use like apple sometimes,
Hmm.
and hickory. Uh, just depends on what it is. But use a Texas dry rub, and smoke the brisket. I'm still haven't figured out how to get the burn ends just right, because those things are gold when they're good. So
Oh, yes, they
that's
are. That's my favorite. Um, well, all right. Saturday night after the BRL races, you're going to have all us BRL guys over at your house. We're having a party at your house. What is it that you're going to serve us? What are you making?
I would probably throw together a big, huge pasta dish of spaghetti
Oh, man.
and some good garlic bread. Maybe have brisket on the side. But there's something else that I really enjoy making is, I think they call it $1 million bacon, where you take thick pepper bacon, put some brown sugar on it, and bake that, just like eating candy.
Yep. All right. BRL races get done about 9 o'clock my time. I think we should all be there. You're in Ohio, correct?
Yes.
So that's 5, 6 hours. Hey, I'll make it for breakfast. We'll just have to have breakfast. That'd probably give everybody enough time to get there. Big breakfast at Steve's the next day. So that bacon sounds absolutely fantastic. Oh my God. Probably not the healthiest thing in the world, but that sounds really, really good. Well, one other hobby I wanted to touch on that I thought was really cool. Video games, the old style games. Tell me about that. Yeah, passion, enjoyment. Uh, whatever you want to call it, but you like that stuff. So tell me about that.
Um, when I failed miserably at college, I got a job working for. There was a gentleman that was actually a huge racing fan that was best friends with my dad, and he worked for a company that he was the general manager, sold uh, arcade games, and I got a job for them and stayed for 4.5 years before I went to Honda. But they, it's right when Pac-Man hit, and we'd get these brand new video games in. Well, some of them, Atari Pole Position, Galaga,
That's
Pac-Man.
my game, Galaga. That was my game.
Yeah, all those were, we'd get a truckload of those things once a week. And then I was actually just working on the loading dock, and they were so valued and spoken for and sold before they hit the dock. Man, we take them and hide them in the warehouse, because some of the customers would come in and they'd try to look through the inventory so they could get one. But I'm lucky enough, actually, from that, I actually have a Harlem Globetrotters pinball machine and a Nitro Ground Shaker pinball machine and a Miss Pac-Man cocktail table that
Oh,
are
that's
that
awesome.
are in the basement, that they need some work, but they still function enough to where the grandkids can play with them a little bit. But
That is
I
so
got
cool.
And the best thing is I got them for next to nothing.
Did you ever see the movie Pixels?
Now,
Look that up. It's an Adam Sandler movie. Just look that up. Have a go of that and watch that. It's a game that's a big part of that is those games from the 80s. It's fabulous. Just funny, funny movie. But so, what was your favorite game from that whole era? Donkey Kong, Galaga. What was your favorite?
wow. Probably,
Well,
actually,
better yet, let me rephrase that. What is the game that you put the most quarters in?
Asteroids,
Asteroids.
which was
Nice.
actually out before Pac-Man. And
Really?
yeah, and because
Wow.
it was actually in a laundromat when I was in college. And I don't know if I spent as much money on doing laundry as I did playing that game. But you know, talking about the trips to Japan and stuff,
Hmm.
I actually have it's made by Tomy. It's called Slimline Raceway. It's a little handheld game that I bought on one of my trips to Japan because you fly to Japan from Columbus. It's a 13-hour flight,
Yes.
so you had to have something to do. Well, then I advanced to a Game Boy and had Nigel Mansell's Grand Prix, I think it was called, and I would just sit and race.
Oh man. How many batteries you go through on a trip like that?
Quite a few because back then everything was just battery. You didn't have
It's
any
just battery.
USB chargers and stuff.
Yep. Um, that is so cool. Man, that is that's such a great era. You brought me back to the 80s F1 now, 80s video games. You've just encompassed my whole childhood, basically, spaghetti and stuff like that. My whole childhood this was my childhood. This whole interview was my childhood. So thank you for taking me down memory lane. But we got one thing though that I do want to wrap everything up. It's our green white checker thing that I like to do. So I'm gonna go through three topics here, and you just either or maybe give me a quick thought on it. You ready?
Sure.
All right. F1 or IndyCar from the 80s. We'll say that from that era, from the 80s.
Definitely F1.
How about now for BRL, the SK or the late model?
I prefer the late model just because I, I still haven't quite figured out how these guys drive that SK and keep it from rubbing tires and everything else.
All right. This last one I'm going to put you on the spot with, so you can feel free to take a minute to think about this. This one you might have to think about it. Pac-Man or Miss Pac-Man?
Miss, Miss Pac-Man,
Really? Why?
because I like the all the alternate screens and different levels.
See, I'm better at Pac-Man. But I like what you because you get the different fruits. You get a lot of different fruits. And for those of you kids out there that don't know this stuff, I think you can buy those retro for your, PlayStations and your Xbox. But yeah, the fruits, and you're right. The I didn't think about that, but yeah, the mazes are a little bit more intricate on Miss Pac-Man. But yeah, I gotta go with Pac-Man, though, man, just because Miss Pac-Man kicks my ass. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. There was one other thing that I did
'cause it
when I
was
worked.
hard. It was harder. I mean, in all seriousness, Miss Pac-Man was a little harder, though. What don't you think?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'm a simpleton. I need the simpler game.
yeah. The other thing that I did when I worked for that company was I actually installed pool tables in people's houses,
Hmm.
which was you talk about something when you're young, you start going into all these really expensive homes and seeing things. You get a lot of ideas for what you want your house to be, but you just hope someday you can afford to do it.
You real quick, you talked about those other games that you have that the grandkids like. How easy or how hard is it to kind of refurbish those things to get those parts to kind of if you wanted to restore them? Yeah, I mean, people restore cars and all that. How hard is that in that industry to restore those older games?
I actually, if you want to spend the money,
Hmm.
the company that I worked for is still in business. They're family owned. They've been in business for, gosh, I don't know how many years. I could pack them up and take them over to their facility, and they would turn them back into new if I really wanted it. But
Oh, wow. Is there like an industry for that? Just out of curiosity. I mean, I would have to think so, right?
yeah, there's I mean, you can go online. In fact, there's a company that's come and worked on my pinball machines a couple of times that they keep saying, "You want to sell these?" It's like, no, not yet.
Well, awesome. You know what? I want to thank you for your time here, and I cannot begin to tell you actually how much I've enjoyed sitting here talking to you today. Like I said, it's for me, it's kind of been a nice reminiscing kind of conversation we've had. So thank you so much for your time. Um, Anything else you want to just give a quick shout out to anybody or anything here? Anything you want to plug or anything like that before we go?
Well, probably the only shout out that I have is my number one supporter, of course, is my wife. She's the one that when I started talking about wanting to get into iRacing, she's like, just do it. Just go ahead and do it. Just,
That's
you
cool.
just need to. So, and she puts up with me all the time. She has for 25 years. So it's pretty
Oh,
cool.
wow. Very nice. My wife and I hit 20 this year, so that's very, very cool. A lot of memories there, probably over the 25 years. So, congratulations on that. That's very, very cool. And what is her name, real quick?
Kathy.
Well, we want to say hello, and we hope that she watches here for this show here. So, well, the very, very last thing now that we've got to do is kind of preview what's coming on the Virtual Grip Network this week. And the BRL will be back in action Saturday night, both with the SKs and the late models. The times are on your screen right now. And I believe we're going to Southern National. So, let me ask you, what are your thoughts about Southern National? What are some of your experiences there? And um, like I said, what do you think of it?
Actually, it's a track that I like. Um, I don't know that I've been all that successful there because one of the recent builds, I can't remember if it was one or two builds ago, it was like they put ice on that track as far as I'm concerned. And I have enough trouble going around in circles anyway. And then when the car gets loose, it's just,
Yeah, coming out of the corners, that's where those patches of ice are there. And, my theory on that is because I think with the new pavement and everything else, I feel like we carry more speed through the corners there than what we did a year or so ago. And anytime you have those high cornering speeds, obviously you're putting the grip of the car, you're pushing it to its limit. You come out of those corners, and there's a lot of banking, but it levels out coming out of the corner. That transition, I think that's what's going to make that night really interesting is how guys are going to handle that transition coming out of those corners there. And I've got a love hate relationship with that track. I've had some good runs there, but I've also loaded up and went home early after 20 laps because I did something stupid on the track because that's the one track. Now that you say that, that is the one track where the cars, I think, catch drivers out more than anywhere that we go. I think, they step out without warning quicker than anywhere that I can think of that we go to. Maybe New Smyrna, but I still think it does it more there at the New Smyrna. So, we've got a lot of history there. A lot of guys. BRL has had a lot of races there, so there's a lot of guys with a lot of experience there, and I think that's a track that's going to probably favor them a little bit. The guys that have raced there and raced there and raced there, um, just because of the quirks, like you said, that someone replaces the asphalt with the ice, and the ice can move around on you too. I mean, at least that's what I feel like. It's like, okay, I got grip, then all of a sudden you don't. And I'll swear to it. It's probably because I don't know, probably at times I stink and I'm thinking, hey, you know what? There was asphalt there a lap ago. Someone replaced it before I got back around. So, yeah, that's going to be a fun track. We look forward to getting there. And again, thank you for your time here. I can't wait to see you Saturday night, race against you again. Um, but we'll we'll get her done, and hopefully you have a good run there next week. And hopefully we finish close to each other. I know you hope you finish in front of me. I hope I finish in front of you, but well, I hope you have a good run there.
As long as we're both in front of my brother, we're good.
All right. Well, just so you know, after talking about this spaghetti and this brisket, and if you perfect the burnt ends or the bacon, if I get a care package with either that bacon or those burnt ends in the mail, I'll fence them for you. If you want it 1, 2, 3 weeks, you just let me know and I'll take care of him. As long as I keep the bacon coming in, I can handle that for you. So, but thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful week. And like I said, I can't wait for you to see you on the track on Saturday. So, with that said, once again, my name is John Hine, along with Ryan Seneca. We thank you for tuning in this week, and also just want to remind you to like and subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell to remind you every time that we do go on the air with all things VGN. And if you're a league owner or a sponsor, virtualgrip.net. Check us out and get in touch with us. Thank you again, and keep it between the walls, and we'll see you next week.